Good morning, everyone. So, today we are going to read the chapter 5 from the book called Life of Swami Vivekananda by his Eastern and Western disciples. The first four chapters have been completed in the previous four spaces. The first chapter being Ancestry, the second chapter being Birth and Childhood of Swami Vivekananda, the third chapter being, what was the name? Early Education and Glimpses of Spirituality, and the fourth chapter being the College Days. So now we have come to the point when Swami Vivekananda is supposed to meet Sri Ramakrishna. So the name of the chapter itself is Shri Ramakrishna. Adjustment is the law of nature, whether in the domain of spirit or through an inscrutable law. East and West offer two fields of activity, one mainly in the domain of spirit and the other largely in the domain of matter. For the glorious consummation of the ideal to which all humanity has been moving through its science, philosophy, metaphysics, and religion. The West has mostly devoted itself to researches in and discovery of the nature of material things. The East, from time immemorial, has experimented in religion in order to learn the laws that rule the realm of spirit. Both ideals are necessary for the progress of humanity, whose future rests on cooperation and mutual understanding between East and West. In the last century, one on the spiritual plane was needed. Materialistic ideas were at the height of their glory and power. The rampant growth of materialism, uninspired by higher idealism, governed the world. While the West was running after worldly enjoyments, the East had fallen from its true ideals. Devoid of the spirit of renunciation, the eternal religion of was broken up into conflicting sects. The world was awaiting the birth of a divine incarnation in whose mind, purified of all worldly taint, the great truths underlying all the religious systems of the world would be revealed once more. An incarnation whose life would harmonize all the apparently contradictory religious ideals and the various national and social ideals of different races and countries, thus uniting humanity by the ties of love and toleration into a single brotherhood. At this psychological moment of the world's history, the Lord, true to his promise that whenever virtue subsides and vice prevails, he bodies himself forth, incarnated himself as Sri Ramakrishna, combining in a single personality the wonderful love and compassion of Buddha and Christ with the keen intellect of Shankara to demonstrate what true religion is. On Wednesday, February 18, 1836, at Kamarpukur, a village of Bengal, a child was born of poor Brahmin parents. Both father and mother were venerated as living saints by the simple villagers. The child was named Gadadhar. He grew up amidst the simplicities of a village, the cows, the fields, and the typical rural life. Yet he manifested even in his early boyhood remarkable traits. It is said that religious songs in praise of the gods or the discussing of religious topics would often send him into a trance. When the father passed away, the family fell into straitened circumstances. The eldest son, Ram Kumar, came to Calcutta and opened a school. Soon Gadadhar joined his brother there. Here, for the first time, Sri Ramakrishna, for that is the name by which Gadadhar has become famous all over the world, came in touch with modern ideas. His brother wanted him to have the education usual for a Brahmin boy in those days, But Ramakrishna, who was already beginning to realize that he was born for a definite purpose, asked himself, shall I attain pity, devotion, and divine fervor by pursuing this education? I repeat, shall I attain pity, devotion, and divine fervor by pursuing this education? No, was the emphatic reply of his mind. Will it enable me to be as God fearing and upright as my father? No, echoed his innate religious instinct. Shall I be able to realize God through this education and escape from universal ignorance and the glamour of material enjoyments? The reply came from his same heart. The same reply came from his heart. Then what shall I do with this education which will not help me realize God or overcome the miseries of the world? I would rather remain all my life and follow the path of God than throw away my cherished ideals, was his conclusion. To his brother's persuasion, he emphatically replied, brother, what shall I do with a mere education? I would rather acquire that wisdom which will illumine my heart and getting which one is satisfied forever. About this time, the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar, some 4 miles to the north of Calcutta on the east bank of the Ganga, was founded by Rani Rashmani, a pious Hindu lady of great wealth and influence. Mathuranath Bishash, her son-in-law, was the manager of her estate. Ram Kumar was invited to be the priest at the temple. He accepted, and so, with his brother Ramakrishna, came to live at Dakshineshwar. In course of time, Ramakrishna was appointed as a priest at the Kali temple. The proximity of the holy Ganga, the quietness and solitude of the temple compound, in contrast with the turmoil of the busy metropolis, and above all, the living presence of Kali, the divine mother of the universe, filled the mind of Ramakrishna with a strong desire of God. There came a great change in him. The boy became the devotee. The devotee became the ascetic became the saint became the man of realization, the man of realization became the prophet became merged in the divine nature which is God. And all this happened in the course of 12 years. It is impossible to give an idea of Ramakrishna's passionate yearning for realization, his utter renunciation of worldly enjoyments, his sincerity, his single minded devotion, and the ecstasies of soul which characterized the early period of his spiritual life. He was innocent of scriptures and the intricacies of religious practices. He hardly received any help from spiritual guides at this stage. All he possessed was the extreme eagerness of the child to see his mother and a strong dispassion for worldly enjoyments. The day was spent in worship, prayer, and song. In the twilight of the early morning and dusk, he would roll along the bank of the Ganga, absorbed in the contemplation of the Divine Mother. The nights were spent in meditation. Thus, while those about him were wasting time in all sorts of frivolity, he was burning day and night with this consuming thirst of God. The vision of the Divine Mother became the one passion of Ramakrishna, and he had not as yet realized her. Days and months passed in this way, with no abatement of his zeal, the agony of longing for his divine mother gradually increasing. In the evening on the bank of the Ganga, he would cry aloud, another day is gone in vain, mother, for I have not seen thee. Another day of this short life has passed, and I have not realized the truth. Then doubts would cross his mind, and he would say, art thou real, mother, or is it all fiction, mere poetry without any truth? If thou dost exist, why can I not see thee? Is religion just a fantasy, a mere castle in the air? But this skepticism uh, was only momentary. In a flash, he would recall the lives and the struggles of those who had been blessed with the vision of God, and he would redouble his efforts. One day, the agony became unbearable. It was an excruciating pain, feeling that life was useless without the vision of God, and determining to put an end to it, he seized the sword that was hanging on the mother's temple. All of a sudden, the the Divine Mother, illuminating everything with her effulgent splendor, revealed herself to him. He fell unconscious to the floor. What happened after that he did not know, nor how that day or the next passed. Within him was a constant flow of ineffable bliss altogether new, and he felt the direct presence of the Divine Mother. After this vision, Sri Ramakrishna became intoxicated with God. The period subsequent to this was replete with thrilling spiritual experiences. He was just stepping into a new limitless realm. He had many and various visions in trance and also in normal consciousness. It was as if he were living in another region where he had communion with strange beings. To people about to people about him, all this looked like madness. Although the young priest had been blessed with the vision of the Divine Mother, he was not happy, for it was not continuous. He put fresh energy into his struggles and intensified his prayers. As his realizations deepened, his vision of the mother began to be continuous. The image in the temple disappeared, and in its place there stood the living mother herself, smiling and blessing him. He even felt her breath on his hand and heard her anklets tinkling as she went to the upper story of the temple. The sense of separation from his divine mother gradually vanished, and he became her child. His whole mind and nervous system thus became attuned to the highest reality, unable to respond to any worldly stimulus. Sex consciousness was completely erased from his mind. Mathuranath even contrived to tempt him secretly but he passed through such trials quite unscathed, embodiment of purity and self-control that he was. He himself said that in his whole life, not even in dream, did he look upon a woman other than as the visible representation of the Divine Mother. The strain of intense spiritual practices and austerities before the birth of the mother was so great that for a time his body became subject to various ailments. He went back to Kamarpukur at the request of his mother, and there his relatives, anxious on account of his health to divert his mind to worldly affairs, arranged his marriage with a young girl from a neighboring village. He readily agreed to the proposal, seeing it as the will of the Divine Mother. This stay at Kamarpukur did him good, but soon he returned to Dakshineshwar and was plunged once more into stormy struggles, forgetting his mother, wife, and relations. Days, weeks, and months passed in this search for truth through other spiritual paths. At this time, there came to Dakshineshwar a nun who was an adept in the path of devotion as well as in the intricacies of the tantric sadhana, which is spiritual practice according to the class of scriptures called tantras. She was the first to diagnose the cause of Sri Ramakrishna's maladies and his so called madness. She saw that he was in the state which is known in the Vaishnav scriptures as Mahabhav, and that his experiences were the result of his extreme love for God. Happy the man who had them. She was convinced in his trances he had scaled the ultimate heights of spiritual realization. She came to the conclusion that Sri Ramakrishna was an incarnation of God, and this she established before an assembly of Pandits giving the scriptures as her authority. Ramakrishna accepted her as his guru and practiced under her guidance the devotional and tantric methods of sadhana, spiritual practices, in which he attained perfection in an incredibly short time. Later there came to Dakshineshwar a Vaishnav saint, an itinerant monk, and a devotee of Ram. Ramlala, or the child Rama, was his favorite deity, and he had already had a vision of him. He carried a metal image of Ramlala with him, which he showed to Sri Ramakrishna. But Ramakrishna saw the living Ram in it, and soon established a loving relationship with it. He saw Ramlala as vividly as he saw anyone else, now dancing, now jumping up on his back, or insisting on being taken in his arms. The latter became so attached to Ramakrishna that he refused to go monk, who was finally obliged to leave him behind, glad to see him happy in Ramakrishna's company. Sri Ramakrishna next took up the highest form of Vaishnav sadhana, the Madhura Bhav, or intensest love of a woman for her lover. All the Vaishnav disciplines center on love. In this particular one, the closest union between worshipper and the worshipped is found. Not the grandeur of the ideal, but the sweetness and closeness of the relationship is what counts here. The most beautiful example of this form of worship is found in Sri Radha's life. And the perfect devotee in this path is one who looks only to the comfort of the beloved, regardless of his or her own personal pleasure or convenience. This discipline roots out the sex idea. The soul has no sex. It is neither male nor female. Sex is of the body. The man who desires to reach the spirit must get rid of sex distinctions. Sri Ramakrishna took up this discipline with his usual zeal. He brought femininity into everything. He dressed and spoke like women and lived with the woman in Mathuranath's family. He made every detail of their life his own till at last he found that the truth could be gained as a woman too. About this time, Totapuri, a sannyasi of the highest Vedantic realization, came to Dakshineshwar. Appreciating the spiritual gifts of Sri Ramakrishna, he asked if he might teach him the secret of the Advaita, non dual philosophy. Under his guidance, Ramakrishna attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the state in which the soul realizes its identity with Brahman, the absolute truth. Sri Ramakrishna later said, I was for 6 months in that state from which ordinary mortals never return. Their body lives for 21 days only and then falls like a dried leaf from a tree. And the soul that was embodied realizes its identity with existence absolute. It had taken Totapuri 40 years to attain this supreme consciousness, but Ramakrishna attained it in a single day. I repeat, it had taken Totapuri 40 years to attain this supreme consciousness, but Ramakrishna attained it in a single day. A wandering monk who hitherto had never stayed at one place for more than 3 days, Totapuri remained at Dakshineshwar for 11 months, imparting his knowledge to this wonderful disciple, setting him firmly on the lofty heights of Advaita. The disciple, in turn, became the guide of his teacher and enlightened him regarding the reality of the personal aspects of truth which Totapuri had hitherto refused to recognize. Sri Ramakrishna next sought to realize the ideals of religions other than Hinduism. He found from personal experience that they also led to the same goal which he had already attained through Hinduism. In his association with people of various sects and in comparing their realizations with his own, he arrived at the conclusion that the ultimate aim of all religions was the realization in different aspects of one and the same truth. Meanwhile, strange stories that Sri Ramakrishna had gone mad were current in his native village. His wife, Sharada Mani Devi, resolved to learn the truth for herself, so she set out and walked to Dakshineshwar, where she was very cordially received by her husband. He accommodated her in his own room for 3 or 4 days and then made arrangements for her to live with his mother in the Nahabat concert room. When Sharani saw how loving her husband was, the anxiety caused by the rumors was removed from her mind. Whenever opportunity arose, Sri Ramakrishna used to teach Sharadamani a variety of things, from housekeeping to the knowledge of Brahman. Once he told her, just as Uncle Moon is the uncle of all children, so God is everybody's own. Whoever calls on him will be blessed with his vision. If you call on him, he also will see him. You also will see him. On another occasion, he asked her with the intention of testing her, did you come here to drag me into the world? Sharadamani, pure and noble soul that she was, at once understood and replied without hesitation, no, why should I drag you into the world? I have come here to help you on your spiritual. One day during this period, Sharadamani, while massaging Ramakrishna's feet, asked him, how do you look on me? He replied, the mother who is in the temple, the mother who gave birth to this body and now resides in the Nahabat, it is the same mother who is now massaging my feet. Truly, I always look upon you as a form of the blissful Divine Mother. On another occasion, seeing Sharadamani asleep by his side, Ramakrishna addressed his own mind, discriminating, this, O mind, is a female body. People look upon it as an object of great enjoyment, a thing to be highly prized, and they die for the sake of enjoying it. But if one goes after it, one has to remain confined in the body and cannot realize God, who is existence, knowledge, bliss. O mind, do not have one thought within and a contrary attitude without. Say in truth whether you want to have this or have God. If you want it, it is here before you. Take it. Scarcely had he entertained the idea of touching the person of Sharadamani than his mind recoiled. At once he was so deeply lost in samadhi that he did not regain normal consciousness that night. He had to be brought back with great care the next morning by repeating the divine name in his ears. Later on, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, had she, that is Shardamani, not been so pure and losing herself assailed me, who knows that my self control would not have broken down and body conscious arisen? I had importunately asked the Divine Mother after my marriage to keep her mind absolutely free from lust. After living with her at that time, I knew that the Divine Mother had really granted my prayers. Sharadamani was thus endowed with rare spiritual fervor, and she became Ramakrishna's first disciple. Some months after this, there arose in Sri Ramakrishna's mind a desire to worship Sharadamani as a symbol of the Divine Mother, Shodashi Mohabidya, a form of Kali, and to offer himself to her. This he did on the new moon day on the month of Jyeshtha, that is May 25th, 1873, when Pholohorini Kalika Devi is worshipped. While the worship was going on, Sharadamani went into samadhi, and so did Ramakrishna after finishing the ritual. Priest and goddess were joined in a transcendental union in the self. When the master recovered, he surrendered himself, the fruits of his lifelong spiritual practices, and his rosary with appropriate mantras at the feet of Shardamani. It was the consummation of his spiritual disciplines. Everything now became to him a symbol of God. Among the innumerable aspects of divinity which Sri Ramakrishna realized, the one that stands out most prominently is that of Kali, the Divine Mother, whose emblem is death and destruction. She, as time engulfs all things, as death she destroys all. Therefore, her garland is a necklace of skulls. Her girdle is made of human arms, and in her hand she holds a bleeding head. And yet Kali is Brahman, for does not the eternal consciousness, the background of the mind, remain when all ideas, temporal and mortal, have been eliminated? I repeat, and yet Kali is Brahman, for does not the eternal consciousness, the background of the mind. Sorry for the interruption. There was some call coming in. I hope I am audible. Can you please, yeah, can you please just give me a thumbs up if I am audible? Anna, Preeti, anyone, just a thumbs up would do. Am I audible? Okay, thank you. So, and yet Kali is Brahman, for does not the eternal consciousness, the background of the mind, remain when all ideas, temporal and mortal, have been eliminated? Sri Ramakrishna worshipped Kali both as the mother and as Brahman. Is her in her terrible forms as well as in the blessedness and bliss of Brahman. The personal Kali merged in his realization in the impersonal. To Ramakrishna, she was also the giver of immortality. She puts down the mighty from their seats and exalts those of low degree. She fills the hungry with good things, and the rich she sends empty away. To her devotee, the mother reveals herself as the ocean of reality. Her heart throb is that of the infinite soul. For him, Kali held the scales of life and death, and the keys of wisdom and ignorance. At her biding, the world begins the world of creation, and at her biding, it ends in destruction. Yet she is also ineffable peace. Sri Ramakrishna saw the mother in all things. He likewise realized her as the indwelling divinity in all souls. Though change, time, death, and destruction are aspects of her, she is the everlasting, unchanging reality Brahman. His ideas of her took on their intrinsic reality as his conscious mind was transcendented, and his soul shone forth as the mother herself. Lost in samadhi, his whole body is stiff, his hands automatically took the form of Bharavaya, Varabhaya, offering boons which one hand and with one hand and protection with the other. The vastness of nature was seen by Sri Ramakrishna as the living reality of the mother. Of what was embodied, she was the embodiment. Of what was unsouled, she was the soul. Beyond all and as all, she dwelt incarnate as the active power of supreme reality. Brahma and Shakti are one. Ramakrishna would say, as fire and its heat, or milk and its whiteness are one, when static, the reality is Brahman, when active, it is Shakti, the mother. She is beyond speech and thought. Verily, she is the Brahman of the Vedas and the Vedanta. In the higher forms of Samadhi, Ramakrishna merged in the impersonal aspect of the Divine Mother. But for the fulfillment of the divine mission, his mind had to be brought down as if by force to the phenomenal plane of consciousness. Then he regarded the world as the play of the Divine Mother. He, like a child, placed implicit trust in her and, as will be seen, followed her guidance in everything. Living in intimate union with the Divine Mother, Sri Ramakrishna had a number of intuitive experiences towards the close of his period of spiritual disciplines. Some of them concerned himself, while others related to spiritual life in general. Of Ramakrishna came to know that he was an incarnation of God, a specially commissioned person whose realizations were for the benefit of others to usher in a new age of spirituality for mankind. Further, he had always been a free soul, and so the aim of mukti, freedom, had no meaning for him. At the same time, he understood that he would not attain final liberation like an ordinary mortal, but would be born again and again to show humanity the way to freedom. Lastly, he foresaw the time of the time of his own passing away and spoke of certain signs which would precede it. These signs were in due course seen and their import verified. About spiritual matters in general, the following were his convictions. As the result of his realizations through all forms of discipline, he was firmly convinced that all religions were true, that every religious system was a path to God. Secondly, the three great systems of thought known as dualism, qualified non-dualism, and non-dualism, Dvaita, Vishisht, Vishishtadvaita and Advaita, were contradictory but complementary to one another. They were stages in man's progress the goal. With regard to activity and inactivity, he said, a man whose mind is absolutely pure naturally goes beyond action. He cannot work even if he tries to, or the Lord does not allow him to work. But the ordinary man must do his duties unattached, depending on the Lord, like the maid servant in her master's house. She does everything for her master, but knows in her heart that her home is elsewhere. Thirdly, Ramakrishna realized that through him the mother would found a new monastic order comprising those who would put into practice the doctrines of universality illustrated in his life. Lastly, his spiritual insight told him that those who were in their last incarnation, who had sincerely prayed to the Lord at least once, must come to him. This statement may be taken in a universal or a personal way as one chooses. Firmly established in the consciousness of God and totally unified with the cosmic wheel, Sri Ramakrishna was eager to disseminate the results of his realizations to all earnest seekers of truth. He literally burned with that desire. He would say later, there was no limit to the yearning I had then. In the daytime, I managed somehow to control it. The ordinary talk of the worldly minded was calling to me, and I would look wistfully to the day when my beloved, all renouncing spiritual companions, his future apostles, would come. I hope to find solace by telling them about my realizations and so unburdening my mind. Every little incident would make me think of them. I used to arrange in my mind what I should say to one, give to another, and so on. But when the day came to a close, I could not curb my feelings. Another day had gone by, and they had come. When during the evening service the temple precincts rang with the sound of the bells and conches, I would climb to the roof of the building in the garden and writhing in anguish of heart cry at the top of my voice. Come, my boys. Oh, where are you all? I cannot bear to live without you. A mother never longed for her child so intensely, nor a friend for his companions, nor a lover for his sweetheart, as I did for them. Oh, it was indescribable. Shortly after this yearning, the youngsters began to come. To the fragrant, full blown lotus of the soul of Ramakrishna also came. Like bees, Gauri Pandit, Padmalochan, Vaishnav Charan, Shashadhar Tarka Chudamuni, and a host of other great Pandits and aspirants. Keshav Chandra Sen and Pratap Chandra Mojumdar, Vijay Krishna Goswami, and the great Nag Mahashoy, Christians, Mohammedans, Sikhs, and Hindus, hundreds of them. There came poets and thinkers, preachers and theologians, professors and leaders of public opinion, rich and poor, great devotees and fit disciples. It was at this time that Narendranath was pinning for the vision of truth. Unconsciously attracted by the wonderful aroma of Sri Ramakrishna's realizations, he also came to Dakshineshwar. He and that group of young men who were later to become the first monks of the Ramakrishna order. That brings us to the end of the chapter 5 today. That was on Sri Ramakrishna, and it was a wonderful chapter. It talked mostly about Sri Ramakrishna's life, but I have read about it in more details. And if you read about his life and what he had said, done, is starting from right from his childhood to the times when got these realizations and everything. The events are so magical, so miraculous, and so filled with innocence and love for God. It's like reading them itself takes you to some another state of being. So I'm waiting to read his life after we finish Swami Vivekananda's life, Sri Sharada Devi's life. We will read about his life too in detail. But in short, in a very short manner, this is the summary. Thank you everyone for joining. I have invited all of you, Aniket and Prije, for speaking. If you're willing to say something or share any thoughts or ask any questions, please feel free to ask or say. Yes, Anna, you want to say something?
Actually, that aspect to it, when he wanted to experience the goddess Kali and she didn't give him her presence, actually, what he did, Akka, he took that sword, Akka.
Yes, he was about to commit suicide. He was about to cut his own throat with that sword right in the temple of Ma Kali, in front of Ma Kali. So it was like do or die situation for Ma Kali to, give her to come and show herself as a living god, not just as an idol, not just as a murti, just made of clay, not something like that, but as a living god. She was bound to, because that day he was like, okay, you have to come in front of me or else I'm going to die.
It was like threatening God.
Yes, he lived a real, I mean, he lived in a real relationship with God. That is where we always fail to understand. We see God as something else, like outside, some outsider, some concept, some idea. But he treated as his own mother. I mean, a small child would treat a mother the same way he used to treat. Uh, there was no deceit in that, made up story in that for even a fraction of a second. In everyday life, starting from the day till the night he slept, it was this constant restlessness to be with the mother. like a very small child, willing to be with his mother, to see her, to listen to her, to, he used to do things like, as it is mentioned in the chapter also, he was not aware of the scriptures also. He did not go through scriptures, or he was not very much used or trained in mm, doing the worship practices. Like his brother Ramkumar Chattopadhyay was a very renowned priest. He was very honored, and he would do everything as per the rules, like whatever Brahmin rules were there to be able to do Kali Puja and all. He was very learned in that. So he used to be very worried about Sri Ramakrishna, because this little brother of him was never into, doing things, following too much of rules and regulations. All he was up to was having the great devotion. So, still before he died, I mean, Sri Ramakrishna took over the puja of Ma Kali, because only after Ramkumar Chattopadhyay passed away. So before passing away, he was also a great man. He also had visuals before he died. He knew that he's going to die. As a result, he trained Sri Ramakrishna, and requested him that he follows the procedures and all, and he takes up the knowledge that he is trying to share. He requested him, and Ramakrishna did follow, did listen to him, and but Sri Ramakrishna would still have his own way of doing puja and worships. And there were groups of priests even in the Dakshineshwar temple itself, because in the Dakshineshwar temple, it's not just one temple of Ma Kali, it has different other temples also. There are probably 12, if I'm not wrong, 12 or 8 Shiv temples. And there are Raghuveer temple, there is a Krishna temple. I mean, there are 3, 4 more temples. So those temples were being, worshipped by other priests of those of that discipline, and they would always have conflict with Sri Ramakrishna, because Sri Ramakrishna's way style of doing worship was completely different, and it looked very crazy. He would even do things like, he would ask Ma Kali to eat the bhog that they used to give, like a person. Like he would take the plate of food in front of Ma Kali's face and would insist that you eat it, Ma, you eat it. So he used to do things like that. And even while placing flowers in the feet of Ma Kali, he would sometimes place those flowers on his head first and then place it mm, on the feet. Like place it in the head is not just touching the head and placing it in the feet. No, he would keep it in his head itself for some time. So very weird procedures, very crazy style. So people could not understand, and by all kinds of, the material aspect of rules and regulations, not getting deeper into, the rules and regulations are always meant to actually trigger your mind with the devotion. And when there is already devotion, then these rules and regulations do not stand any sense. So, Sri Ramakrishna was already in that stage, and through his life, what all he was trying to express was that this devotion is what you need. So most of the priests would follow the rules and rituals and regulations, but did not have that amount of devotion at all. So what's the point of worshipping then, if we're not connected to the divine to that extent, if we're not devoted to that extent? Then there's no point of having following anything, right? Yes, Anna.
Then, in such a situation, he should have faced many unpleasant encounters because he didn't follow the norms prescribed.
Yes, he had many life-threatening incidents also. There were many sects of the priests who would actually try to kill him. There were many murder attempts that happened with him, and miraculously he was saved by, you can say, Divine Mother herself. When we will read about his life in detail, you will come to know there were many instances where He was like an innocent child. You'd see that it is mentioned by many other, enlightened souls or seekers, like this lady. I just am forgetting her name. The first guru um, of his, who declared that he is the incarnation of God. Tell me the name. We just read it today. Hmm. Anyone remembering her name? Totapuri was had come third, I think, but the first teacher, Brahmani Devi, I think. Brahmani. Hmm, I'm not able to find the page also. Hmm. Tantric sadhana. Hmm. She was the first to diagnose the cause of Sri Ramakrishna's maladies. I am still not able to find her name, but most probably her name is Brahmani Devi. So she came to the conclusion that Sri Ramakrishna was an incarnation of God, and many people later on also insisted. Totapuri Maharaj also did, excuse me. So Totapuri Maharaj had taken 40 long years to attain the supreme consciousness, and Sri Ramakrishna did it in just one day. So, like, even though you can see that there were claims made that he was the incarnation of God, but if you would see his behavior, he was nothing more than just an innocent child. If someone attacks him, he's like helpless, completely helpless. He's not able to do anything, like a helpless child. He would just be full of kindness, love, and he would kind of even sweetly talk to his attackers also. But yes, there were instances when he had fiercely argued also. He would get angry also. Like you will see all the characteristics of a child. This child would also, right, be angry at times, would throw his hands and legs, shout, right, whenever something unpleasant happens to him. So those behaviors were there, but he would not behave like an adult, take up sword or fight, something like that. No, those characteristics were not present. He was always very innocent like a child. So yes, this is it. And I was thinking yesterday, almost today we finished 5 chapters, and some of the incidences, even incidents like in one of the chapters, in probably the third chapter, I think, when it is talked about the early education and the glimpses of spirituality in Swami Vivekananda's life. There was one incident when the in the school had thrashed Swami Vivekananda to such an extent that his ears started to bleed profusely. So I was just trying to tell about this incident to someone, and I felt that I'm not remembering the very detailing of the stories. So it is so sad, right? If you even make a study every day, uh, for your mind to have an impression, lasting impression, you have to read it again and again. So if it doesn't make a lasting impression, if you do not have a memory of it, a very the detailed memory of it, then what would you do by just reading? So probably after completing maybe a couple of more chapters, I would try to come back to the chapters in a mm incident based format, so that we can recap on the important aspects of all the chapters, and we can verify if we remember what read and from the past chapters. Anna.
Akka, I wanted to ask actually what made him to say yes to marry Sharda Devi?
Yes, this one is also mentioned here in this chapter alone. In a very short way, it is mentioned. It was, again, he would not do anything without asking permission from the divine Mother Kali. He went to the Kali. I mean, he, though he was not there in Dakshineshwar at that time, he was at Kamarpukur when this marriage proposal was happening. So he worshipped one small Kali idol in his house. So there he went, stood up and asked, "Should I marry?" And he got the you know permission from Divine Mother Kali, and so he agreed on that. But again, it is said that actually, I mean, Divine Mother Sri Ma Sharda Devi was also, as you can see, right, that when Sri Ramakrishna had asked her that why have you come? Have you come to drag me to the world? Because when you get married, you get entangled to worldly affairs. You have daily things to take care. You have what we call as sansar, right? The worldly matters. You have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of things to do in a married life. And but he was someone completely in a spiritual journey, altogether in a different realm. So he had asked her that why have you come? Have you come to drag me to the world? So the instant reply she gave was that why would I drag you to the world? I have come to help you spiritual path. So she sets she these things actually sets her also apart. She was mostly very silent and calm, but she was herself was very advanced. Otherwise you cannot be a life partner to such a great soul. She had her own ways of spirituality, and in later parts, if when we will read about Srima Sharda Devi also, you will get to know uh, she was she it is said that she was also the incarnation of God, the feminine side of it. So it was all kind of, you can say, these are all destined to happen, and both of them knew that they would do it as an example to the society, to the people, that even being in a married life, even being not being sannyasi, you can still attain the spiritual heights. That is possible. So that is these two people actually lived together and tried showing to the world. Yes, Anna.
Actually, seems it is a God Makali's plan uh, to make them husband and wife and lead such a ascetic life. Great.
Yes, absolutely. There are many stories. There are many small, great stories in detail. And Shrima Sharada Devi is, I would say, she is probably one step even more than Sri Ramakrishna, I would say, because she is a mother, right? Like she is the mother would always be one step more for the children, right? So it's even told in Ramakrishna orders, the monks would tell you that if you are in difficulty or in a very bad situation where you are really feeling down and low, uh, call upon mother. She responds earlier than Sri Thakur. They do say so. And we have seen also in her, in the life story of Srima Sharada Devi, how kind she was. Like she was even kinder than Sri Ramakrishna. So it's again the although they were like, Brahman and Shakti, the concept of Brahman and Shakti, as Sri Ramakrishna was explaining in this chapter, right? That when it is calm and silent, when it is inactive, it is Brahman, and when it is active, it is Shakti. That is, Brahman and Shakti are both the same things, but the active and inactive state, that is how it differs. So, likewise, you can say Mother Shraddha Devi was the embodiment of the Shakti Roop, of the motherly, the nature uh, side of creation. So she was always very gentle and kind towards everyone who would come to her. All right, Aniket and Prijay, you do not want to say anything? Would be closing the otherwise. Nothing? All right. Yes, Prijay. Sorry, Prijay.
No, no, I'm just listening. I don't have any doubt.
Okay. I think you are traveling
No,
also.
no, I'm in my factory actually. I'm not traveling.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining, everyone. And yes, Anna, you want to say something?
Actually, I was fortunate to join today's session.
Who is that saying? Aniket or Anna? I didn't get.
No, actually, I was fortunate today to join the session. It was such a nice uh, incident about Ramakrishna.
Yes, yes. All the that is what I was mentioning to you, that you are you are missing the this, because the time spent on these are the best times of the day. And though again I tested, as I said, I tested myself that if I remember all that I read, I am not remembering the things in very much details. So I'll go over the things again.
But actually, mere reading does not do much because when you discuss it, you remember more.
Yes, but again, there is the problem that this books, there are two volumes, and both the volumes consist of around 600 pages each. And if you, the way I do for Rabindranath Tagore's book, right, paragraph, explanation, description, and then reading, that takes much longer. So if you go like that every day morning, that is not possible. And as a result, we cannot go in that format for this one. And moreover, Tagore's one is a little complicated in the sense because there are references of poems. Poems are always having metaphors, right? So there are always inner meanings. We'll have to always analyze and discuss. But these chapters are written very straightforward. So it's I'm just treating it the way that when I would read myself alone, I would read it this way, the same way I'm trying to do that in the space, and keeping it in the end if anyone wants to discuss anything on that. But again, be it in any case, even if you discuss or not, revision is required. I mean, story is told only then it can have a lasting memory. I won't say impression. Impression is the effect it leaves behind, the perfume of it, that would be left behind if you soak yourself completely in the in the reading. That would stay, but the intricacies of the details, the memory of it would stay only if we keep on revising. So that has to be there. I'll do that also, probably after two more chapters or something.
Actually, here also, when you come across some tough words, we are not able to understand the exact meaning. And later, when we discuss, it becomes clear.
Yeah, that will be there. That is why I'm also keeping this discussion part also, so that if anyone has any doubts, we can explicitly discuss that particularly.
While reading, you can't interrupt you because you will be in that reading mode, and you won't be able to see our response and all. So, I think after reading, we will have a little session, and there we can discuss a little.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I also do not request anyone to. I do not send any speaking invites also while I'm reading. I send the invites only after I finish, so that I can focus on reading first. So yes, let's see how it keeps on going. And anyway, we will have to have smaller chunks also, so that we remember things more easily. So we'll be doing that. Anything from your side, Aniket?
First of all, very good morning, Sonali ji. Actually, I was giving water to my plants. Uh, yeah, it was a good session, but as usual, I joined pretty late today. Yeah, it was a good session. I missed almost like half an hour, like 50 to 45 minutes of chapter 5. Yes, I agree. You can't try to promote and forcefully invite people. Because this kind of spaces, people usually don't want to join because spaces, they want to talk about like masala and all that, masti masala and all that. uh, Informative spaces are not that much attracted towards the audience on Twitter.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yes.
I agree with you. You can't just invite people to join such kind of spaces. This is like a self-interest space. I have my self-interest. That's why I join the space. It might be that I join late, but I join. Uh, yeah. So I will have to listen the recording of the chapter 1 to chapter 5, all the 5 chapters. So I'm looking forward.
Yes, the first two chapters would be in the YouTube channel. It will be easy for you to search if you go to the YouTube channel. In the timeline, you will find different other posts, so it might be difficult for you to find out the chapter one because it was 5 days, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so yes, it is true as you said. Again, I mean, you you go to what you want to go to. So it's we can't do anything on that. That's fine. Also, not expecting anyone to join. I usually start when I start. I usually start alone. Like there is no one in the space. I still start uh, because I just did not want to do it alone. I could read it alone, but I kept it in the space so that only the few people like you, right, like all of you who are interested can come and join. So I have seen the replays happening in many of the spaces of this particular series of Swami Vivekananda. Seen that there are replays like in first chapter, second chapter, I forgot. It's around 91 people total. Uh, so it that day 14 people had joined, 1-4, but the replays were so much that the total people tuned in is 91. So uh, that is also there. Maybe some other time some other people are willing to listen to this. It depends again. But what is more important, I feel, is when I read it aloud, these 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 lives of this great man, this is a vibration that is being created in the environment, right? And that is getting present, that is there staying in the air or in the universe when I'm reading it aloud. So that is also having some effect somewhere. It will reach out to the uh, ready mind one day or someday or the other. whenever it is necessary, whenever it is destined to. So why not put it out? Why not put it out? So that is the books are there, and the different formats that are now in this current world available. We should try to make use of all the formats so that it is available to everyone. We cannot force, but it can be available to everyone. Yes, once more, thanks everyone, and wish you a good day.
Yeah. Same to all. Have a great day ahead.
Yes,
Such kind, this kind of space, make your morning special, more informative, and rather than listening, not useful spaces, this is much better to start your day with some good positivity.
yes, Aniket, you're right. Absolutely right. So yes, thank you everyone, and let's catch up tomorrow with another new chapter.
What is the time, Akka, tomorrow?
It is usually between 9 to 10:30. Okay, anytime on depending on on that particular day, but mostly it would be 10 or 10:30. The high chance. All right. Okay. Bye bye. Take care.